All right, good afternoon. We'll call to order the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting for October 26, 2016. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of the minutes from our regular meeting on September 28, 2016. Are there any changes necessary to those? If not, those will stand as approved. The next item is a consideration of our calendar for application and meetings for 2017. Those have been provided. Are there any changes necessary? Any comments you need to make on those?
Nothing from staff. If those dates, we work those dates around Planning Commission so that there aren't any conflicts. So if those dates, which are indicated with squares, are okay with you, then we would appreciate if you would approve the calendar.
Need a motion.
A motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I was actually asking a question. I wasn't actually trying to usurp your authority.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Okay, next we'll move to new business. First is a variance request, application Z16060 by Tom and Kathy Fix, requesting a 1.7% variance from Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which allows a maximum lot coverage of 25% in the single-family RS-15 district. And this is for property located at 2712 Hatteras Court. Mr. Anthony, if you would review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicants, Tom and Kathy Fix, wish to construct a new single-family house on property located at 2712 Hatteras Court in the Winthrop Hall subdivision. Hatteras Court is a cul-de-sac, and the subject property is situated along the bulb of the street. The proposed house would have a footprint of 4,121 square feet. The Murfreesboro zoning ordinance allows maximum lot coverage of 25% in the RS-15 district. The subject property is a 15,459 square foot parcel, so the maximum allowable lot coverage would be 3,864 square feet. The applicants seek a variance from the ordinance to allow lot coverage of 26.7%, which is in excess of 1.7% or 257 square feet over that maximum 25% lot coverage. In the request letter, the applicants indicate that the shape and location of the subject property poses a practical difficulty. Specifically, the subject property is located along the bulb of Hatteras Court, which is a residential cul-de-sac. The curvilinear front property line leads to a reduction in buildable area and constitutes an unusual characteristic, according to the applicants. The applicants further contend that the property's condition is not self-created because the lot was platted by the developer with the dimensions shown on the site layout exhibit. The applicants would have to reduce the footprint of the proposed house in order to meet the zoning standards. This could be done by either reducing the square footage of the house or constructing a multi-story house and shifting a portion of the desired square footage to a second floor. However, the applicants have indicated that they do not prefer either of those options. Rather, they wish to have a single-story house meeting the dimensions that they've provided. The applicant is here, and staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for staff at this point?
Mr. Anthony, so it's just the footprint of the house. There's no setback variances then.
That's correct. It's
okay.
just that 25%
okay.
cap. Mm-hmm.
All right, Mr. and Ms. Fix, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Yes, just real quickly. Good afternoon. My name's Tom Fix. This is my wife, Kathy. And we've lived in Murfreesboro in the Region Wood subdivision for the past 22 years. As both of us are moving into our retirement years, it's been our desire to build a custom home that is primarily on one level. In the city, it's been difficult to find lots large enough to build a one-story house that also meets the minimum square footage required by the HOA. In February, we purchased this lot in Winthrop Hall and have worked with James and Associates to design our custom home. A few points that we'd like to highlight and for you to keep in mind. Number one, as mentioned, our design is fully within the setback requirements. Number two, the livable square footage on the first level is 2,741, which meets the 2,700 square foot minimum required by the HOA. Some of the remaining square footage that is included in the land use intensity ratio are garages and covered front and back porches. We do lose some square footage of the lot due to the lot being on the bulb of the cul-de-sac. Both the developer, which is Chip Lloyd, as well as the HOA have approved our request. And as also mentioned, our variance request is a small 1.7% of the total lot square footage. And lastly, most of the back property line, almost all of it in fact, backs up to the retention pond, so there's not going to be anything built behind us. So again, thank you for listening and considering our request. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Fix? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? If you would, please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
If no discussions, I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all of in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none, so that application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16061 by Fred Francis of Fred Francis Builders, LLP, representing Andrew and Susanna Foster. They're requesting a 5-foot variance from Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum front yard setback of 40 feet in the single-family residential district. And this is for property located at 2207 Riverview Drive. Mr. Anthony, if you review that for us.
Yes, sir. The applicant, Fred Francis, representing Andrew and Susanna Foster, is presently constructing a new single-family house on a 1-acre property located at 2207 Riverview Drive in the Riverview Park subdivision. The property is bordered by the Stones River on the rear, and approximately 1/2 of the lot is located within the Stones River floodplain. The property is zoned RS-15. The applicant seeks a variance from the minimum 40-foot front yard setback to allow the front facade of the house to encroach into the setback by 5 feet. The applicant contends that the iron pins marking the subject property's corners were incorrectly set or removed at some point. Relying on proper pin placement, the applicant began constructing the house, not recognizing the encroachment of the garage into the front setback. The applicant further contends that the floodplain on the rear half of the property constitutes both a practical difficulty and an unusual characteristic of this lot. Approximately 1/2 of the lot is unbuildable without undertaking floodplain mitigation measures such as elevating the structure. Thus, the house is situated completely on the front half of the lot. At their nearest points, the house and the floodplain boundary are separated by approximately 45 feet. With the house already under construction, it appears that the only alternative to obtaining a variance would be to remove a portion of the partially completed garage. Doing so would allow the house to sit within the minimum required setbacks. However, obviously the applicant wishes to complete the house with the garage intact. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff at this point? Seeing none, the applicant, Mr. Francis or Foster, is they present, like to provide any comments for us or anything you'd like to add?
I'm Fred Francis with Fred Francis Builders. He's correct in what he's saying, that when we laid out the house, the basement part of the home, we went on the pins that were there. And even the engineers actually used those same pins when they did some of their surveying. And until we started to put it on a plat and realized that the numbers weren't adding up, they went back out, resurveyed those front pins and found them to be approximately 5 foot further forward for whatever reason. The lot's, I'm guessing, probably 40 years old, so I'm not sure how long those pins have been there or how they got to where they were, but we were clearly under construction when we found this. So.
Okay. Questions for the applicant at this point?
Well, according to the outline here, it's only just one small corner of it. It even extends, right?
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct. Just the right front corner of the garage there.
If that's all you have, thank you.
Thank you.
This time we'll conduct the public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
Well, I have a question since I'm new to the board. How have we historically handled situations like this? I guess that'd be to Donald.
I would say, during the time that I've worked here, we've had a couple of times where things were already constructed, and I would say that the board has tended to be pretty lenient with those. That's been my experience, at least.
And that's been mine also. Been working with the board for several years. I can't recall one of this nature where the variance was denied, and especially when it's a couple 3, 5 feet, whatever, into a 40-foot setback. If we had a 10-foot encroachment or 20-foot encroachment, there might be more cause to be a little stiffer in considering it. But one such as this, I think, generally has been approved.
I would move that we approve the application as presented.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none, so that application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16062 by George Huddleston, requesting a 6-foot variance from Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum rear yard setback of 30 feet in the single-family residential district for property located at 3115 St. John's Drive. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Yes, sir. The applicant, George Huddleston Jr., wishes to expand an existing garage and driveway on property located at 3115 St. John's Drive in the Breckenridge subdivision. The dimensions of the proposed addition would be approximately 25 feet in depth by 22 feet in width. The subject property is zoned RS15. The proposed garage would encroach into the required 30-foot rear yard setback by more than 5 feet. The applicant requests a variance to allow this encroachment, and staff has rounded the applicant's request up to 6 feet. The single-family house on the subject property presently includes an attached 2-car garage, which is accessed from a driveway that runs along the west side of the property. The applicant wishes to expand the garage by adding an additional 2-car bay with a second garage door. The applicant indicates that a practical difficulty exists due to the placement of the existing house and the garage on the lot. The existing garage was built to the rear of the house, near the rear setback line, making any future expansion difficult. The applicant indicates that the Breckenridge HOA will only allow attached garages. Further, the HOA requires that all lawn cutting equipment be stored indoors. And the applicant contends that the existing 2-car garage will not accommodate multiple vehicles and lawn cutting equipment. The applicant also contends that because the house was constructed in 1994, 19 years before he purchased it, this situation is not self-created. There appears to be no alternative location on the subject property for a garage addition that meets the applicant's desired dimensions of 22 by 25 feet. In order to construct a garage addition and meet the city's minimum building setback requirements, the applicant would have to reduce the width of the proposed garage. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff at this point? If not, Mr. Huddleston, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Try to just briefly fill in a few things. Tracy and I are the owners there. I'm the applicant. That's a little bit weird. Anyway, a 16-foot door is called a 2-car garage, but our 2 cars and keeping clothes clean just don't work that way. So that's why we've done this. We've talked to our contiguous neighbors, and Colin and Trish Ambrose own behind us, and they said, what are you going to do for landscaping? We showed that on the plan. They said, this is great. Hope you can get it. So we've done all we can to try to make sure everybody in the area is considered and taken care of. We've been through the Breckenridge HOA committee, the architectural review committee, and they've approved it pending your approval. Answer any questions if anybody has.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Thank you. This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for any further discussion or motion.
There's no further discussion. I move to approve the application.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application has been approved. Next, we'll move to variance and special use permit requests. The first one is application Z16065 by Clyde Roundtree of Huddleston Steel Engineering, representing Mountain Star Properties. They're making the following requests for property in the Commercial Highway District located along the east side of John R. Rice Boulevard. This application has three components. The first is an amendment to a previously granted special use permit allowing a self-storage facility in the Commercial Highway District. Second portion is a variance from Section 27K3A of the zoning ordinance, which requires a 3-foot minimum landscape strip adjacent to the base of a building along the building sides. And third, a variance from Section 27J of the zoning ordinance, which requires an 8-foot perimeter planting yard on a property with an area greater than 2 acres and less than 5 acres. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Yes, sir. Let me start by pointing out, as Mr. Halliburton has asked me a couple of times before, we are initiating this week some zoning ordinance changes, and so we are looking at making these types of facilities allowed by right in highway commercial and light industrial zones. So maybe we won't see quite so many of these in the future. And this one may look a little familiar to you. The applicant, Clyde Roundtree of Huddleston Steel Engineering, representing Mountain Star Properties, appeared before the board on July 27th, 2016, making requests for a special use permit and a variance for the 3-foot landscape strip along the base of the building. The board approved both of those requests at that time. Since appearing before the board in July, the applicant has made several changes to the site layout. These include shifting the proposed building southward, reducing the height of the building from 4 stories to 3 stories, and increasing the width of the building from 190 feet to 250 feet. After reviewing the applicant's site layout and the building elevations as they were revised, planning staff determined that these proposed changes warranted further review by the board. In addition to seeking an amendment to the previously approved special use permit and the accompanying base of building landscaping variance, the applicant now seeks a variance to allow a 3-foot reduction in the width of the required perimeter planting yard. Section 27J of the zoning ordinance requires an 8-foot perimeter planting yard on property with area greater than 2 acres and less than 5 acres. And the subject property has an area of 2.84 acres. The driveway along the rear or east side of the proposed building would encroach into the required 8-foot perimeter planting yard by 3 feet near that northeastern corner of the proposed building. The applicant contends that the subject property has an irregular shape, which is an unusual characteristic and poses a practical difficulty. Staff notes that while the lot does have an angled eastern property line, it appears that the proposed structure may be too large for the site. Mindful of the values related to site landscaping set forth in the zoning ordinance, staff suggests revising the design of the proposed structure as a means of alleviating the need for the requested variance. A 3-foot reduction in the depth of the building would allow for both the rear driveway and the required perimeter planting yard to be constructed. Beyond redesigning the structure, staff is unaware of any other alternatives at this point to obtaining the requested variance. Staff can answer any questions that you may have on this project.
Any questions for staff at this point?
And I want to point out, I don't have color renderings in the electronic packet, but the applicant did furnish them, and I've provided them, or I think I provided them to you. Okay, yes, there they are.
The front yard setback, or the in the front of the building fronting John Rice Boulevard, can it, that is the space, they don't have any room to play with there either to move the building forward?
No, not. I think because of there's a pretty broad setback there, and then you have the parking spaces, and then the required parking aisle width, and so there's really not much to work with on that side. It is a difficult lot to work with. It's sort of the remnant. The Texas Roadhouse restaurant is going on part of this, and so this is, as you can tell, sort of tapers down and becomes a little difficult to work with.
Yeah.
So, number one, you said they revised the plans to reduce it from 4 stories to 3.
Correct.
So then they increase the width of the building.
Correct.
Which causes this situation.
Right. This situation appeared on the previous plan back in July.
Right.
And I remember at that time asking the applicant who was here if they would still be able to respect that perimeter planning yard, and he at the time said yes. And I think what happened is when they went back and started doing some revising, they realized that wasn't quite going to work
That's
around
what I
that
thought.
corner.
That I recall we had discussions about this.
We did, yeah.
But they went ahead and expanded the footprint in spite of that.
They did expand the footprint. I don't know that footprint expansion affected this perimeter planning yard issue. I think that issue was already there, really.
If you go to the old application, it looks like there's the same amount of space in the drawing.
Okay.
No, that's our current one. I thought we had
No, I think
was
I
mistaken.
provided
I
the
thought
staff
the
report,
picture-
but not
Nothing
the
else.
drawings.
I apologize. I was looking at the same pictures we have today, thinking it was the old one.
All right, anything further for staff?
No, I would point out that because the site has changed a little bit, the building has changed, that you will need to take separate votes and reapprove those same two if you choose to do that, that you approved in July.
Okay. Is there anything the applicant would like to add at this time?
Enoch Jarrell with Huddleston Steel Engineering. Mr. Roundtree, who was here last time to represent, is upstairs meeting with staff on another project. I'm the civil engineer involved with this project. Universal Storage originally was going to go with a 4-story building. They have several of these around the country. They're building one in Raleigh right now at 3-story. They were going to go to 4. Found out from a construction standpoint, it's really just almost cost prohibitive. Originally our site was more to the north, sort of where Lot 4 is today. We've shifted the site closer to the Texas Roadhouse building because they're buying the entire property, so they will have a vacant lot in the future. The up front, we have 15 feet from the right-of-way to our property line. That allows a 5-foot sidewalk to be built, and then a 10-foot grass strip, which really providing more than the Texas Roadhouse is up front. I think they had a 10-foot, but they're putting some sidewalk in it. So we're providing more green up front. And it's really just one pinch point at the back, and I think that was discussed before. We're adjacent to the interstate, and I don't know if you've looked at the aerial, but at that one pinch point where we're asking for the variance, it's 100 feet from there to the off-ramp, and it's 300 feet from there to the interstate. So there's, from a visibility standpoint down the interstate, you're not going to know if it's 3 foot or 5 foot, or along the rear. And we are providing, more than the 8-foot minimum in other places to sort of offset that. And the applicant would like to have, or the owners really, where the applicant would like to have a 30-foot drive around the building. He could reduce it to 27. I mean, that would be his alternative, is to reduce it. He's just got, folks with rental trucks driving around, and a lot of them, I guess, are not used to driving a lot of trucks. He just want a little wider drive off if he could get it. So that's the reason for the request for the 3-foot variance, just in that one area, is to allow him the wider drive. And then his alternative would be the 27-foot drive in that area. but he'd like to have it 30, just because of the, like I say, we're next to the interstate. It's really not going to be visible anyway. So that's the reason for the request, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
What is your response to the city's suggestion of having a smaller building?
Well, I mean, the building is 35% of the lot. I'm not sure, Donald, what the maximum building coverage is, but I mean, the building's not, in my opinion, it's not too big for the lot. It is a bigger footprint, same square footage they had before. It's just 3-story instead of 4. But and we got more than 15% landscaping green space on the site, and our building's about 35% of the lot area, so it's well within, I think, the standards of C8 zoning from that standpoint.
There is no maximum lot coverage on the CH zone. I think staff's perspective is that the bulk of the building, along with those garage doors, along with the fact that you've already had to approve one landscape variance to make this work on this site, I think that's sort of the direction that planning staff is coming from, is that there comes a point where you start narrowing the landscaping down until there's really not a whole lot left.
And I don't disagree with that. If we're out front or on the sides, we are providing a side landscape buffer we really didn't have before. Before it was shared drives, and we still have that, but we're providing an 8-foot landscape strip that we didn't have before on the sides. We're really trying to enhance the sides and the front. This rear's next to the interstate's really never going to be seen anyway, but I understand the staff's and board's position on that, and their alternative would just be to narrow that drive to 27 feet in that area. I mean, that would be their option as opposed to reducing the size of the building.
So you're going to have a landscape strip on the Texas Roadhouse side as well as the side where there's a empty lot at this point, or just on the side where there's an empty lot? Both.
Which we did not have before because of the shared drive, and we've added those landscape strips to the side.
To both sides of the
Yes,
building.
ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion. And again, we have 3 components to this.
What type of buffer is required for this space at that point, Mr. Anthony?
There is no buffering required here, to my knowledge, because all of the surrounding property is highway commercial. So it's a perimeter landscaping strip. The perimeter landscaping strip is the 8 feet all the way around the site.
Not any type of planting.
Not other than what is typical and customary with perimeter landscaping yards, which is not as intense as an actual buffer, like the Class A through E buffers that we have in the zoning ordinance. Those are more for between incompatible uses.
They're not applying to eliminate the perimeter buffing. They're just applying to have reduce the amount of space that landscaping would be put in. Correct?
That's correct. They're applying for the reduction from 8 feet to 5 feet in that corner. Right.
I mean, I'll make a comment. I get both sides of this. I get where the city's coming from with respects to, how much is too much, keep going back to the well. But on the applicant side, where this is going to be placed, I don't know that it matters. I mean, so I'm not, I'd like to hear about everyone else's opinion, but I'm not necessarily against this application, I guess, is where I'm leaning.
I think I agree that in a certain set of circumstances, I would be opposed to reducing that by 3 feet. if it was in a different area, if it was closer to the road at that spot, if it was closer to another building or another type of zoning. In this circumstance, it seems that I'm willing to let those 3 feet go. I wouldn't mind a tree,
Right.
Something bigger be planted there, just to kind of disguise the.
Since it's all commercial, I don't have a problem with it at all. I think it's okay with me.
Unless there's other comments, and I'll go ahead and make them. This is not specific. These comments are not specific to the number one, but I'll make a motion that we approve the amendment to approve a previously granted special use permit allowing a self-storage facility on this property, which is number one.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a question, what, the amendment is due to what, because of the
Anytime-
change? Or
Because they
just,
changed
They
something from the
modified
first
it.
time.
okay.
Anytime they make some, if I'm correct in that. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none, so first portion's been approved.
If no questions, I'll make a motion on the second part, the variance from section 27.
I'll second Ms. Mosby's approval.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? There are none. Part 2 has been approved. Next, Part 3.
I'll make a motion to approve number 3.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I want to make clear that, okay, so the intent of this, with the plan that he's brought, they will have landscaping on 3 sides, front and the 2 sides, that complies with with the plans, with the requirements of zoning, right? And this motion grants a variance for that southeast or northeast corner that fronts the interstate.
That's correct. It would just be for the corner shown in the exhibit.
And if they make any other changes, they've got to come back.
Correct.
That's a good question, though.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Or none. So that application's been approved. Next, we'll move to special use permits. The first one is application Z16063 by Wayne Moore of Boy Scout Troop 197, requesting a special use permit to allow temporary vendor outdoor sales of Christmas trees on property in the Highway Commercial District located at 1807 Memorial Boulevard. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Yes, sir. This is an application that this board reviews on an annual basis, so I'm not going to bore you with the full staff report. But just an overview, the applicant wishes to operate a temporary Christmas tree sales lot on property occupied by Haynes True Value Hardware at 1807 Memorial Boulevard. The zoning ordinance allows temporary vendors in the CH district by special use permit. Mr. Moore has indicated that he will abide by all of the general and specific standards for special use permits and for temporary vendors. If the board approves this application, staff recommends the following conditions. The applicant shall submit a $500 deposit to the City of Murfreesboro prior to opening for business. 2, the site shall pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. The applicant shall purchase an electrical permit from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. And 3, all temporary structures shall meet the minimum building setback requirements for the CH zoning district. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Moore, anything you'd like to add? Okay.
10th year, so.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this application, come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for any further discussion or motion.
If there's no discussion, I move to approve the application, including subject to staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. The application's been approved. Next, we'll move to Z16064, again by Mr. Wayne Moore, Boy Scout Troop 197, requesting special use permit for outdoor sales, this time in a single-family residential RS-15 district located at 2511 New Salem Highway. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Same situation as the previous one. The applicant wishes to operate a Christmas tree sales lot on the grounds of Fellowship United Methodist Church at 2511 New Salem Highway. This organization has done this for a number of years, and we've had no reports of anything wrong going on there. The applicant has agreed to abide by all of the general and the specific standards listed in the zoning ordinance. We do have some conditions. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the following conditions. Number one, the applicant shall either submit a $500 deposit to the city of Murfreesboro prior to opening for business, or provide a written statement from Fellowship Church indicating that the church will take responsibility for cleanup of the site. I believe the applicant has already provided this, but we still want the condition on the record. Two, the site shall pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. The applicant shall purchase an electrical permit from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. And three, all temporary structures shall meet the minimum building setback requirements for the RS-15 zoning district. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Moore, anything you'd like to add on this location? At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If no questions, I'll make a motion to approve with the necessary conditions set by the staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved as well. Next is staff reports and other business.
I do have one thing. We distributed your continuing education hours that are required by Tennessee Code annotated. Those are in front of you. If you're short the 4, we still have 2 more opportunities this year in the legal department for webinars. We also have recorded webinars that we can provide if you're not able to make it to those, or if those won't provide you with enough hours to meet the state requirement.
I have a question.
Just get in contact with us.
I don't recall even being made aware of this particular requirement, A. B, I'm happy to try to do that. I think I just came on board, July was my first meeting?
He did.
Like so
we'll check to say you may well be exempt from having to do that this year. We'll check on it.
And then, so I guess the third question would be, how do I go about doing this? This is 4 hours every year?
It is. And
I think I attended a zoning webinar, drones, that was conducted, actually wasn't in March, but it was, I don't recall when it was, but I sat in on a lunch meeting then. But those are the types of things that count toward continuing ed. So
correct.
Maybe I was going to ask Brenda after the meeting was over when I was seeing, a question about this. So thanks for bringing it up.
Sure thing. Just give us a call and let us know. I believe that we maintain copies of all of the webinars that have occurred that we can provide to you if you ever need sort of last-minute hours.
Well, I certainly want to be in the good graces of the state, so if you'll send me the information I need,
very good.
We'll see if we can't get that completed before the end of the year.
I would assume you have some continuing ed requirements for your primary profession in your work with Farm Credit.
Well, no, but I do have continuing education requirements to maintain my license or my certification as a certified general real estate appraiser. I don't know if that counts.
A good chance that it would.
But I've got plenty of that, so.
Yeah, so, I think there's a pretty good chance you'd be
Okay.
covered from that. We'll verify that. It'd probably be best if we could get us a topic or something to that of the continuing ed you've attained and or continued to do this last year, and we'll make sure it's
Okay.
satisfies the requirements. I'm pretty sure that it will, but and you're always welcome to come have a sandwich with us when we do a webinar up at the library.
Right. Good.
It's not too bad.
That's great.
Not as bad. I had to do the old VCR tape of some recording one time. You have to really pay attention to stay with those things. Made it through, but barely. Anything else? All right, then we will adjourn.